Howdy, Pi here with part 1 of New Career Kickstart, a guide for helping you get started in career mode with Kerbal Space Program. So if you've never played Kerbal before, I highly recommend that you do the first 3 tutorials because they will give you a lot of good knowledge that you're going to need that's really outside the scope of this video. So the tutorials are found under here, Start Game, and where it says Training. Click there and do these first 3 right here. You'll thank yourself in the morning if you do those first 3. So we're going to start a new game. Career is already selected by default. We're going to give our career a name. We're going to call it Kickstart, and we're going to pick a flag for our career, and of course we're going to pick the Pi flag, and we're going to be on normal difficulty, which is the default, but we're not going to change any of the default settings. All the normal settings are going to be the same, except under the Advanced tab right here, we are going to enable Kerbal's Level Up Immediately. It's no big deal if you don't do it, but what that means is that when you go on a mission, a flight, or whatnot, you do not get XP. Your Kerbal does not level up until you land back on Kerbin. Well, it's more realistic to do it this way, I think, because, for instance, if you go to school and take a class, you don't wait till you get home before you learn the lesson. You learn it on the spot, right? So, same thing here. We're going to level up immediately as soon as we get that experience. So, we are ready to start. And because this is career mode, and here's a little in-game tutorial, I'm going to skip over that. Because this is career mode, you have to manage 2 things: cash, your cash flow, and your science. You have to get science points. You spend your science points right here in the R&D center. You unlock different nodes of the tech tree and you get more parts. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is go here to Mission Control. Mission Control is where you take contracts. You complete contracts to get paid. There's 4 contracts on offer at the beginning of the game, and you can only accept 2. That's what this is saying right here. Until you upgrade Mission Control, you can only have 2 active contracts at a time. So we're going to take these 2, gather scientific data from Kerbin. We're going to launch our first vessel. We're going to take those 2. And to accomplish those, we're going to the VAB, the Vehicle Assembly Building, and another in-game tutorial that we are going to skip. We're going to use this capsule right here. Okay, it's the basic capsule. The first thing we're going to do is get science points. So we go down here to the science tab, and we only have 1 science experiment at the beginning of the game, which is the mystery goo. So we're going to click and take that, but we're going to take 2 of them. We're going to go to 2 times symmetry here. We're going to put these, and we're going to turn angle snap on, and we're going to put those right there. Now by default, Jebediah is in the cockpit. Of course you can change if you want to, but you must understand that the pilot is the only one who can use the Stability Augmentation System, also known as SAS. If you have an engineer or a scientist in the cockpit, they cannot use SAS, and trust me, SAS is very good to use, much easier to control your rocket while it's in flight. However, this is our first ship that we've built. We're going to go to the launch pad. We're not even going to fly. We're just going to get some science. Now we're going to do a biome progression, so we're going to start close to home. There's the Space Center right there on the launch pad. This is a biome by itself, launch pad. Every facility at the Space Center is a separate biome, which means you can do science experiments inside each of these different areas and score science points that way. But we're going to start off on the launch pad, do our first experiment, which is this mystery goo. Right click, observe mystery goo, and it will tell you this first line of green text. It will tell you what biome you're in. So right now we are at the launch pad, mystery goo observation from the launch pad. it tells us we're getting 3 points for that experiment. So we're going to click the green clipboard, keep experiment. You always want to keep your experiments rather than transmit the data. For one thing, when you transmit data, you only get a fraction of the science points. You don't get the full science. Even though it's only 3 points, you would only get 42% of that 3 points. We want the whole thing, so we're going to keep the experiment. Another thing with transmitting data, it takes quite a bit of power to do that, electricity. So yeah, we're going to keep all the experiments. So we're going to keep that. Now, we have another mystery goo right here. Let's go ahead and do that one also. Look what it says, 3 points. So we have 2 mystery goo containers. From those 2 experiments, we should get 6 points. But you don't really get the 6 points, and we're going to show you that in the post-mission report. So we're going to keep that. We have another experiment here. We right-click anywhere on the capsule. You can right-click. Go down here to Crew Report. Click that. And it's also from the launch pad. So we're going to keep that experiment. Now, we're going to go over here to the little picture of the Kerbal, mouse over where it says EVA. We're going to click there. We're going to right-click the Kerbal, and we're going to get an EVA report from the launch pad, of course. So we're going to keep that. We're going to get back inside, and that EVA report automatically gets stored. That's what this text right here is telling us. So we've done all the experiments that we can do on this flight, which is not actually a flight. So now we're ready to recover. And we mouse over up here, and you see the drop down. Recover vessels, what you want. Click that. And here's the post-mission report. Okay, so mystery goo from the launch pad. The first time we did it, it told us we're getting 3 points. There's our 3 points. The second time we did the mystery goo from the launch pad, it also said 3 points. The little pop-up window, but look, it's only giving us 0.7. So what that means is, anytime you do 2 copies or more of the same experiment within the same biome, you only get full points the first time you do that experiment in a particular biome. So keep that in mind. Click next, and it goes over here to parts, which these are the parts that we just recovered, so we get a little bit of cash back for that. No big deal, we're going to make plenty of cash. And our crew, Jeb, has not leveled up. He will not level up until he actually goes into orbit, and then he'll get his first star. But nothing yet. So now we have 9.6 points of science. We're going to go here to the research and development, and this is our tech tree, which we're going to unlock more parts right now. So we have 9.6 to spend. These are each 5 points, so we can only do 1. This is the one we want to unlock, mainly because of this thing right here, which is a thermometer. And that gives us another science experiment early on, and the earlier that you can unlock more science experiments, that means the more science points you can get, which means you can unlock more parts quicker, right? Makes sense? So we're going to grab that one right here for 5 points. Now, when we put that capsule on the launch pad, we had a contract to gather scientific data from Kerbin, which we did. So it's green. We got paid for that contract. We have not even launched our first vessel yet, so we still have that contract to go. And right here it just shows the individual payouts. Usually there are 2 payouts per contract. Gather scientific data from Kerbin, $4,100 plus 1 point of science, right? Same thing here, same contract, but another payout and another point of science. So we're going to keep that. Now, the little blue thing here is called World First Milestones. These are things that you do when you're on a mission that you may not even have a contract for. They're just a byproduct of having done certain things during your mission that you're going to get paid for. So we got $3,200 because we did an EVA at home, and we performed the first one of our experiments at home. So we got paid separately for that, just for doing those things, which we were going to do anyway, right? So we keep those. Okay, now Um, we don't really have enough science, obviously, to do anything else, right? To get that one. So go back to the VAB. Now, we still have one active contract to do. We still have to launch our first vessel. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to start off with the same capsule as we had before. We're going to add to it the flea, which is a solid rocket booster. We're going to add a parachute. We're going to keep the parachute at the default settings. So you can right click and you have different parameters that you can change. We're going to leave everything default. 1000 altitude setting is when the chute fully blossoms, and we'll demonstrate that more when we're in flight. Now we're going to add also, we picked up, remember, we have 2 thermometers that we can put on here. One on each side. Now why am I taking 2 copies of each experiment? Because remember I said you do 2 experiments of the same experiment within the same biome, you don't get more points. You know, you don't get full points for that second copy. Well, it's because we're going to hit 2 different biomes on this flight. That's why we're taking 2 different copies. Okay. Now the last, not the last, but one more thing we're going to do. This is only going to be a short flight. We're not going very high. We're not going very far. We're going to thrust limit that engine. You know, the default is 100%. That's way too much. We don't need to go that fast. So we're going to turn this down to like 44, 50 to 40, anywhere in that range is fine. We're also going to take out some fuel. We're going to take about half the fuel out of it. Okay, like that. Now, the last thing that we're going to do is always check our staging list. So, if we go to the launch pad right now and launch this, I hit the space bar. This little engine's going to go off. At the same time, my parachute's going to come out. And I don't want that. I want my parachute to come out later. Once I've done my little flight and I'm on my way back down, then I pop the parachute, right? So click plus right there to add an empty stage. I'm going to drag that down because remember, staging works from the bottom up. Whatever is on the bottom happens first. Then when you hit the space bar, the next thing up happens. Even though the numbers, it's kind of numbered backwards, I think, you know, whatever. Whatever happens, whatever is on the bottom stage happens first. That's the important thing to remember. And we're going to name our craft right now. We didn't name that first one, but we're going to name this one flight number 1. So our first flight. So that's going to take care of this contract. Launch our first vessel. Okay. Jeb is still in the cockpit by default. And we always save. After you do your staging, save it. Click save while you're inside the VAB. That way, if you go to the launch pad out here and something goes wrong and you revert back to launch, then your staging is already set. If you fix your staging out on the launch pad and you revert to launch, you're going to have to redo the staging again every time you revert. But by saving it in here, making it correct in here, if we have to revert, then the staging will be good to go. All right. So we go to the launch pad, and so we're going to do just a small flight. We're going to take off from the launch pad. We're going to fly up over this way, and we're going to land right out here, just past the beach. It's called Kerbin Shores. It's a separate biome. That's why we're only going this far right now. Kerbin Shores, that's the second biome that we're going to hit. The first biome is while we're in flight, up in the air, okay? And so I'm going to right click these and pin these to the screen, so that way I have plenty of time. You know, all I have to do is click here, good to go. So always activate your SAS, either click here or press T, and that will activate your Stability Augmentation System, SAS. So Jeb is ready. We're going to fly up and just go over there just to the east, and because that is east out here, this is north, this is west, looking back towards the VAB and the mountains behind, and this is south. So we're going to go to the east and just splash down just offshore. We don't want to go too far because that would be a separate biome called Kerbin's Water if we go too far out in the water, which we're going to do on the next flight. But for right now, we're just going to get Kerbin Shores. So we're going to take off in 3, 2, 1. There we are flying, and we're going to click this one. Temperature scan while over Kerbin Shores. Mystery goo while flying at Kerbin. I'm going to right click the capsule and get a crew report. Flying over Kerbin Shores. And we're going to look down. We're pretty much right over the beach right now. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the chute. Now remember I said the chute we're using the default settings. So as you can see, it's got an initial deployment right here. It's not fully opened yet, right? The chute is set to fully open at 1,000 meters. That's what this number means. When does this chute fully blossom? It starts to fully blossom at 1,000 meters, which is plenty good for most applications. Okay, so when this gets down to 1,000 there, you can see the chute starts to fully open. We can go ahead and time warp on down to the ocean. And you can stay in, this is physical time warp by the way, which means not only is time accelerated, but also the physics in the game are accelerated. And we can splash down safely, just like that. So now, let's turn this a little bit so it right side up. There we go. Now we can do the second set of experiments that we have. Mystery goo. Mystery goo observation from Kerbin Shores. See, we're in a new biome now. And I'm going to turn these two off. We're going to do a temperature from Kerbin Shores. And don't forget your crew report. But watch what happens when I click crew report. We get this little warning right here. And it's asking you, do you want to overwrite your existing crew report? No, you don't. You want to keep it and you want to get a new crew report. So how do you do that? Well, cancel. Go down here, click EVA. While we're on EVA, right click on the capsule and then click this little option right here, take data. That is the crew report that we took while we were flying over here. We're going to take that data, which is now in his back pocket. It's in his spacesuit. While we're out here, we're going to do another EVA report from Kerbin Shores. Click that. Now we're going to get back inside, and that data in his spacesuit will automatically get stored. That's what this is telling us right here. That gets stored in a different storage slot because the crew report slot, it only holds crew reports, and it only holds one crew report at a time. You have to clean out that slot, take the data out, so that you can do a new crew report in a new biome. So now, if we right click, go crew report, now we can take the crew report from Kerbin Shores here. Okay, there we have it. All experiments we've done, and we can recover. There's all the experiments that we did and showing what biome that we did them in. 33.5 science on that one flight. That brings us up to 47.1. We get a little bit of money back for the parts that we recovered. And still, as I told you before, Jebediah does not level up yet. No big deal. Let's go down here first. Let's look at these. That was the contract that we had, which was launched our first vessel. So we got a little payout and 1 point of science. We got a second payout right here, launching our first vessel, and another point of science. And of course, usually you get these world first milestones. If it's the first time you've done a specific thing, then you get these world first milestones. Each one has a separate payout, and each one has a point of science that you get with it. So we'll take it. Now we have 47 science total. Let's go here to the R&D. This is the next one we're going to get, mainly because we have to unlock this to be able to continue on down the tree, right? That's how the tree works. So we're going to do this one for 5 points. We have 42 points remaining, and this is the next one that we want. Why? Like I said before, it's because it has another science experiment. So the earlier that you can get a new science experiment, that means you can get more science points and unlock more parts quicker, right? So that's 15. We have 27 points left. General rocketry, this is the next one that we want. Now, this is a very specific order that we're unlocking these parts, and of course, you don't have to do it this way, but this way works. You know, that's the whole point of the New Career Kickstart. You unlock these things in a specific order, and that will help you. It'll make life easier on yourself later on in your career, right? This is just to get your career kick-started, right? Make sense? So yeah, we'll go ahead and take this one. And what do we get? A bigger fuel tank, a liquid fuel engine. This is a liquid fuel tank. Liquid fuel plus oxidizer. Don't forget, a rocket engine takes oxidizer to operate in a vacuum, right? So we'll go ahead and grab that one. And yeah, there we go. Now, as you can see, we've made some money because we've done 2 contracts. So let's go back to mission control and see what other contracts there are. Wow, look at all these contracts that there are. Temperature survey of Kerbin, temperature survey. This is a parts test contract. Test a heat shield, another part test. We're not going to do any of that. These are the next 2 that we want. We're going to escape the atmosphere. Go ahead and get that. And those were the 2 of the 4 that we had at the very beginning of the game. Same ones right here. Orbit Kerbin. Go ahead and grab that one. In fact, we're not going to do any part test or survey contracts whatsoever. I don't like them. You can try them if you want to, but yeah, good luck with that. They're really, some of them are really frustrating, and they will you'll find out they're really more trouble than they're worth. All right, so no part test or survey contracts. So the next thing we want to do, because we do have our next 2 contracts here, the next thing we want to do is get more science. And we're not going to do these contracts at all yet, not till the next flight. So they're just going to sit there, okay? The sole purpose of flight number 2 is to be able to get more science points to unlock more parts. It's going to help us accomplish those next 2 contracts much easier, make it easier on ourselves, right? So the first thing I want is the new part that we have here called payload. Under the payload tab, it's called the service bay. It's just a little, kind of like a closet that you can put stuff inside. And what we're going to put, we're not going to leave anything on the outside of our capsule, right? We're going to put everything inside here because this will protect your experiments. There is a chance if you leave all the experiments attached to the outside of the capsule, for instance, when you finally do go outside the atmosphere and re-enter, there's a chance your experiments could explode. And if they do explode, you lose the science, right? You have to return the experiments safely to the ground. So we're going to put these inside here, but we want 2 of these like before. And I'm going to press R to change to mirror symmetry. It just toggles back and forth. We want mirror symmetry. I'm going to go around to the back here. Let's see, flip these over. I'm going to put these, turn angle snap off. And I'm going to put these off to the side like that. I'll flip back around to the front. Pick up this new experiment that we have here. Put that off to the side, right in front of the goo canister. We're going to take these 2 thermometers off the side, off the outside. We're going to turn those sideways. And we're going to put those right about there. Now we're going to flip back around to the back one more time. We're going to change back to single symmetry. And we're going to press R again. Now we're switching back to radial symmetry. Put one of these towards the back, right about there. One more time back to the front. One more pressure, otherwise known as a barometer, like that, and another thermometer, like that. And then we're going to close it up. This will be flight number 2. Flight number 2. And save it. Now, another new part that we just got is the heat shield, which is really not that big a deal on this particular flight, flight number 2, because we're not going very high. We are going to go higher than before, but we're not leaving the atmosphere. So when we come down, the heat shield will really not be needed, but we'll need it for next time. I'm just going to go ahead and put it on there now so I don't forget it. You know, a decoupler is always good. That will separate all the fuel tanks and engine that we put down here. That will break those off, and then we'll just be landing with the capsule and our experiments. Okay. So let's see what fuel tanks we have. We have 2 fuel tanks here. We'll take this size, the T200, and we're going to take 3 of these. With a T45 swivel engine. What that means, swivel, is it has gimbal built into it. Look here. Gimbal, vectoring range, 3 degrees. What that means is the nozzle can swing. This is very exaggerated that I'm showing you here, but yeah, 3 degrees this nozzle can move in any direction, and that will help you steer the rocket during flight. Comes in really, really handy. So last thing we do, we always check the staging inside the VAB. So the engine goes off first, then we decouple, we drop away the whole bottom of the rocket, and then on the way down we have our last thing to do, which is the parachute. Looks good. Let's save it. Let's go to the launch pad. So on this flight, the next biome that we're going to hit is called upper atmosphere. The upper atmosphere begins at around 16,000 meters, and it extends all the way out to 70,000 meters. So anywhere between 16 and 70,000, that is all the same biome, and it's called upper atmosphere. Okay? So we're going to enable SAS as always. We're at full throttle now. We're going to back that down. We don't need to go full throttle. But remember last time we just went up a short flight. We just went up and came down and splashed down just offshore. This time we're going much farther. Well, not much farther, but you know what I mean. We're just going to launch up. We're going to angle out over the ocean. We're going to splash down somewhere out here. And that's called Kerbin's Water. That'll be the next biome. So we're actually going to hit 2 different biomes on this flight. Even though I have 3 copies of each experiment, we're for sure going to hit 2 biomes, and a couple of these experiments will actually count as a third. Once we get coming down and once we get below 16,000, we'll do that second copy of experiments, which will actually be considered while flying over Kerbin's Water, which is another separate biome in itself. Okay, so we throttle 2/3. We're going to launch in. We do have 2 contracts, but we're not doing these contracts yet. Remember, the only reason we're doing this flight number 2 is to get more science points, right? Makes sense? Here we go. In 3, 2, 1, launch it. So here we go. We're taking off straight up, and we're going to go ahead and start tilting over. And start angling out over the water. We'll tilt over to about 45 degrees relative to the horizon. And you can tell, here's the horizon, and here's our rocket angled up at 45 degrees, right? Does that make sense? And we're starting to really pick up speed now, but we're still in the thick lower atmosphere, so we're getting shock waves here. Let's go ahead and go to the map view. And let's turn off this and this and this. Alright, there we are. There's our apoapsis, the highest point in our trajectory, as you can tell just by looking. We're going to go up to the highest point, and then we're going to come back down. So we just call it the AP or the apo, but I'm going to let that get up to okay, 45. We just ran out. We just ran out of fuel, right? We have no more fuel here. We'll go ahead and hit spacebar. We're going to cut that loose. Don't need it. See you later. Now we're well above 16,000, so we can go ahead and do our experiments. We'll do the first copy of these 3 experiments in the upper atmosphere. Right here it tells you upper atmosphere. Good. Keep it. Pressure. Upper atmosphere. Keep it. Temperature. Upper atmosphere. Keep it. Don't forget to do your crew report. Right click on the capsule. Crew report from upper atmosphere. Keep it. That's pretty much all the science we can do right now at this particular point in the flight. So we're going to time warp. We're going to get on up to the highest point. Then we'll start coming back down. Now it's a good habit when you're even though we haven't exited the atmosphere, but we're coming down. It's always a good habit to orient your ship to retrograde on the nav ball, the retrograde marker. To come down, heat shield first, right? Does that make sense? Even though, like for this particular flight, it's no big deal. So we're gonna time warp till we get down below 16,000. And then we'll drop out of time warp and do this middle set of experiments. That way we will be out of the upper atmosphere. Okay, there we go. So we do a goo, and it tells us while flying at Kerbin, not very many points, but yeah, we expected that. We're going to do a pressure scan while flying at Kerbin. We get full points for that, right? We're going to do a temperature while flying over Kerbin's water, right? We get full points for that. Alright. Now we're coming down. We're going to pop the chute at about 5,000. We can go ahead and time warp. There's 5,000. Same thing again. When we get to 1,000, the chute will start to fully open. There she is. Brings us nice and safe down to the ocean surface, and that's called Kerbin's water, a new biome. We'll do the last set of experiments once we are safely in Kerbin's water. There we are. Right click, and we observe that goo. And observation from Kerbin's water. Good. Let's do a pressure. Yeah, Kerbin's water. And temperature. Temperature scan from Kerbin's water. Very good. Now the all-important crew report. And we also get the warning here. Do we want to overwrite the crew report? No, we want to keep the existing one. We want to take a new crew report. So how do we do that? Remember, we go to EVA. We right-click on the capsule. We take the data, which is the crew report that we did while we were flying over here. And while we're out here, we're going to go ahead and get an EVA report. Kerbin's water, good. I'm going to get back inside. And that data gets stored in a separate storage slot. But now the crew report slot is empty. So I can right click and click crew report. Now we can get a crew report from Kerbin's water. There we go. All experiments are done for this flight at least. So now we can recover vessel. And the post-mission report reveals 65 science points on that one flight. Right? Brings us up to a total of 78.2 actually. So we've done 2 flights, we've done 4 contracts. Let's look here at our contracts. Or I'm sorry, we've only done 2 contracts because I saved those. That flight we just did, flight number 2, was strictly to get more science points, right? We still have 2 contracts, which we're going to do in the next video. Escape the atmosphere and orbit Kerbin. Both of those will be done on the same flight. Okay, flight number 3. We have 78 points to spend, but we're not going to spend those yet. We're going to save that till the next video. Unlock some new parts that are going to make it super easy for us to do that first orbit. Alright, so That will conclude part 1 of New Career Kickstart. As you can see, we're up to 208,000 Kerbucks. We have 78 points of science to spend. So not bad for only 2 flights, right? So join us next time for part 2, where we'll be going to orbit for the very first time. Thanks for watching, and we will definitely check you later.